Salem witch trials is a series of legal cases in Salem, Massachusetts from February 1692 to May 1693 in which more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft and led to 25 deaths in total. Salem is a Puritan village founded in 1626. Its residents were isolated from the outer world. It suffered from battles with natives and French settlers. This state of the village, with the help of famines and diseases, strained the relations between the villages. Although Dorothy Good was accused of witchcraft on March 24, 1691, at the age of 3 or 4, witch trials are considered to have started in 1692. The year 1692 came with one of the coldest winters recorded. The events began when 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris and her 11-year-old cousin, Abigail Williams, started having fits. Although his name does not appear on court documents, historians agree that Dr. William Griggs diagnosed that the girls were affected by an evil hand. After the news spread, 12 women were said to be afflicted, according to modern historian Pavlak, 10 of whom are mentioned in the records as accusers. At first, Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba, a Caribbean slave serving Elizabeth Parris' father, and also the Salem village minister Reverend Samuel Parris, were accused by 4 of the afflicted children, Elizabeth Hubbard, Ann Putnam Jr., Elizabeth Parris, and Abigail Williams. Tituba confessed and testified against Sarah Osborne. Tituba's confession plays an important role in the upcoming events. She admitted to practicing witchcraft and accused Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne of forcing her into doing so. Sarah Osborne died in prison on May 10, 1692, and Sarah Good, who gave birth to Mercy Good in prison, was executed on July 19, 1692, after her infant died in prison. While Elizabeth Parris left the town soon after, the other accusers continued to name and testify against more and more people. Abigail Williams accused 57 people in total, while Ann Putnam Jr. named more than 60 people, and Elizabeth Hubbard testified against 29 people, 13 of whom were executed. The relations between the villages may be considered a cause for the accusations, considering that the accusers were often relatives of the jurors. The children often accusing adults is another concern about the integrity of the accusation process, since they were young enough to be manipulated by their families. Elizabeth Parris being the daughter of Salem village minister Reverend Samuel Parris, and the accusers having relatives in court, raises the question of whether the trials were made justly. Moreover, the family of another one of the main accusers, Ann Putnam Jr., was an important family in Salem, and was a strong ally of the Parris family. After her parents died, she gave the only known apology among the main accusers while trying to join the Salem village church, seeking an income to look after her siblings. Another cause of this series of events can be the doctrines of the court and the Puritan church. The accused was often given a choice to confess, apologize, promise not to commit witchcraft ever again, and implicate others. Tituba, for example, was set free in exchange for confession and accusation of others. Last but not least, spectral evidence was another controversy questioning the integrity of the accusations. According to many of the court records, the accusers claimed to see the specters of people they accused whenever an afflicted broke out into fits. The touch of the so-called witch was also believed to cure those fits. Although at the time, whether the devil could take the shape of an innocent person was a controversy among the theologists, this was held as evidence before the court. This evidence was also an argument among the judges. Nathaniel Saltonstall spoke out against this method and was brought under suspicion. He resigned from his position 2 days earlier Bridget Bishop's execution. By the suspension of the trials, 79 people were accused, depending on spectral evidence alone. The trials were finally suspended by William Phipps, the governor of the Massachusetts colony, allegedly when his own wife was accused.
Salem was known as a spawner place for the naissance of the witches, even though it was not the first one known as dark practices of witchcraft. Number given to indicate the mass killings and executions fluctuate between 110,000 persons, with all kind of accusations and implementations regarding witchcraft. Having been smoothly described as this, let's talk about its large-scale consequences. First, acknowledgement of wickedness towards the women and children in terms of witchcraft came from one of the judges of Salem witch trials. That month, One of the enlightened judges of the court, known as Samuel Sewall, had reckoned that their trials were unjust and composed of guilty accusations directed at minorities. After that, in 1702, the General Court declared that nearly all trials were totally unlawful, which endangered the positions of the judges and members of the court by declaring them as unlawful members of justice. General Court ordered a day for fasting and compensation for the rest of the families. In 1706, most of the people accused of witchcraft were absolved, and in 1711, the colony passed a bill restoring the rights and good names of those accused and granted $600 restitution to their heirs. It was not until 1957 the state of today's Massachusetts apologized. To ponder on its consequences, one should look at the legislation improved after the trials. Since the witchcraft trials deeply affected the whole United States legislation and jurisprudence process, it came with the idea of presumption of innocence until it is proven as guilty. Due to the general forgiving towards the witches, wholly underlined idea of proof within the context of law. Besides, the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution gave the right to legally represent the people who are being accused of. Secondly, it led the acceptance and rethinking of minority rights, which is exemplified in the game of Arthur Miller's The Crucible, describing the terrifying events of Salem in terms of accusations of witchcraft. Many scholars and scientists have been working on the reasons that eventually lead to instinct of tracing, burning, hanging, and killing the witches overall. One of the most prevalent studies which comes to the point of proof is about its medical roots embedded in Salem. Linda Caporael, in her article published in Science in 1976, claimed that a type of fungi which can be found in today's Massachusetts could lead to symptoms about mass hysteria. According to her, symptoms characterized by exaggerated behaviors of populace can be also seen in the people who are into the LSD-based drugs. These type of fungi, which can be easily used in rye bread, can also lead to the sleep paralysis. Nevertheless, current scholastic debates about the roots of the mass hysteria or witchcraft or the consequences of witchcraft were not known until the exact point of accusations. Nevertheless, current scholastic debates about the roots of the mass hysteria, which has been debated for years by psychologists, are less inclined to grasp the problem as a medical but a historical concept.